is the Be Your Best program with Julia Storage, your life course. Today we are most honored to have Ms. Joan Mugenzi, who is the CEO and lead coach at Imagine Me Africa. She is also an established author whose books are now available on Amazon. Joan, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Torash.
Our interest today is to have a discussion on how we maximize our potential. How do we maximize our performance? And in your career, we note that you are actually a lead coach. So we'd like to know, what is it about coaching and maximizing performance?
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasure being here. Thank you for hosting me. And I like what you're looking at in terms of being your best self. And when you're talking about being your best self, you're literally talking about you maximizing your potential. It means there's a lot that you are made for, there's a lot that you're created for. So how do you get that out of you and put it out there? And how this journey starts is by you getting to a point of self-realization, that awareness that you get to know about understanding yourself and knowing how is the best way that I show up. Because once you have a good understanding of who you are and how you show up, then you're going to begin trimming everything that doesn't matter and focus on that makes you who you are, the thing that really, really defines you. I'll give you an example of my personal life story. I am a journalist. That's how my journey started. Then I did public health. But then along the way, I discovered that I'm an encourager. And knowing that for me gave me momentum. But I didn't know how you use encouragement as a source of income. Let me first put it that way. Because you can imagine if they ask you what is your talent, it's not like you're telling someone I'm good at interior designing. You're talking about encouraging. What does that even mean? But at the back of my mind, I knew it that I would only show up as my best version if I'm busy encouraging. And so that was a journey that even when I was busy practicing my public health, when I worked with an NGO, World Vision International, as I practiced that, at the back of my mind, I knew what I'm doing is supposed to be encouraging people. Then I discovered coaching. So coaching only gave me a name. It gave me a label to go and say, okay, fine, now that I know that there's a profession called coaching, let me sharpen my saw. Because again, one of the reasons why we don't show up as our best versions is because you discover who you are, and then you resign to that. And pardon me, and I guess maybe I can get away with murder here because I am a Christian. And I know that everybody can wake up one morning and say they're a pastor just because they are reading the Bible. But there's a difference between one who chooses to say, let me sharpen my saw. Yes, I know I have been called to pastor. Yes, I know I have been called to go and evangelize. But the question is, do I understand how to go about that? Let me go for training. That makes the difference. So you discover who you are, discover how you can show up in the world, but then sharpen your saw, because that's the best way that you can maximize your potential when you're not second guessing what you need to do.
Very interesting. You know, many people go through life asking themselves, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Mm-hmm. People live in a sort of by accident. How can really one be able to know the direction he or she is supposed to have in life? Seeing your journey and discovering your purpose, what you're supposed to be and achieve in life.
Well, there are telltale signs. I think I should put it that way. There are things that kind of naturally occur to you, and you might not even understand why they are naturally occurring to you. That's the beginning of a journey. Sometimes you can look at the people in your circle of influence and ask them, what is it that I'm good at? Where are my strengths? What are those things where I really, really, really just frustrate you? Because people will always tell you, they will tell you these are your strengths, these are your areas where you need to improve. And I tell people, don't spend your energies trying to focus on areas of what we tend to call areas of weakness. You show up best in your strength. And all of us have strength and we all have weaknesses. So if you put all your energies in your areas of weakness, then you're not showing up as the best version of who you are. So that is a bit of the shorter version. Part of the other thing that one can do is to talk to a coach, okay? Because as coaches, we hope people step out of themselves and look at themselves as a third party. Because you know what normally happens when you're narrating stories, you're part of that drama. So you can't isolate yourself out of that drama. You need someone who is going to be with you and be like your mirror and help you to say, hey, look, your jacket isn't as straightened, okay? Because they are able to see you differently. And so when they mirror that back to you, you're able to say, oh, that makes sense. But also now, when it comes to the environment in terms of how do we even support those around us, you know, there are people you would find that every time they're volunteering to do things, volunteering to do that, and you realize this person might have a sense of leadership in them. So you give them the opportunities, and these things can be seen even in children. You're able to see that this child is ever volunteering to do things, they want to take lead, they want to take charge. Don't look at the child and brush them off. Just know that there is something that is beginning to manifest. But then how do you support that child? I remember there's a short video clip that is very popular, Be a Mr. Jensen. That video is very interesting. There's this young child who was restless. His hands were always drumming things, and the teachers were frustrated until this Mr. Jensen one time decides, follow me to my office, and then asks him, have you ever considered being a drummist? And now that gentleman became a drummist, celebrated all over the world and all that, just because somebody discovered something. So let's simply be observant, but then you can find help. You don't have to go it alone.
Now this thing called coaching, the coaching we have known is the one done at school where they said we do coaching so as to do better in some particular subjects. But this thing called coaching in places of work and in career seems to be new in our environment. Is there, to what extent really do people understand that in our environment?
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Torash, or you want me to call you Julius?
Both.
Both names. Yes, they are both your names. Yeah, that's quite interesting. It's interesting that you actually talk about that. Yes, coaching might appear new in our environment, but also globally, I know that's not widely spread. But in the in the developed countries, this is a trend that they know. You're not going to find a CEO that doesn't have a coach. Actually, they have multiple of them because they're going to help you in different facets. But like I was giving you the analogy of a mirror at the start, the coach is somebody that is just going to help you look at things very fast and be able to look at yourself and say, hey, I think that makes sense. And then you begin pursuing a journey when there is something that is working. And I will go a little bit technical here and say that the International Coaching Federation, the body to which I belong, and by the way, we even have a chapter here in Uganda, the International Coaching Federation Uganda chapter, where we have professional coaches. The idea is that we partner with you as a client in a thought-provoking and creative sense so that we can help you reach that potential. Because what we are stretching here is your thinking capacity. Interesting, of course, every time we are thinking about coaching, we remember that days you're not good at math, go for coaching. No, that's not what we are talking about, because you're trying to fix something. In coaching, we are not trying to fix things. We are trying to help you show up the best way that you can. And what we are doing here, and here I'm talking about the third generation of coaching, where we are expanding the thinking capacity of individuals, because science has revealed that human beings have a lot of capacity to enlarge their thought process. They just need the thought-provoking questions. You know, that inquiry that is going to put you in a reflective mode and think and say, okay, I hadn't thought about that perspective. I now see things differently. Of course, coaching has its history in sports. That's why, in fact, when you said, you know, you've always heard about this thing called coaching, I had forgotten about the classroom coaching. Usually people ask me, are you a sports coach? Because that's the genesis of coaching, the first generation of coaching, where people would focus on tasks, to say there is this task. But then it evolved into what you would consider your motivational space, inspirational space, when the idea of self-actualization came up. That, you know, you go through the things of life and then you reach self-actualization. But there is more to life than just self-actualization, okay? So that's how the third generation of coaching comes in, where it's about expanding the mind, expanding how people are thinking about things. And as they're having that reflection, they're able to step out and say, hey, there's something that I hadn't paid attention to here, and I think this is what is going to be my game changer. The moment you discover that game changer, then focus, focus, focus. Because the other thing why people don't thrive in the things that they do best is we are trying to spread ourselves so thin, trying to work on this, trying to work on the other, and that doesn't give you the maximum benefit that you would want. Because again, research has shown us if you spend 1 hour every day on a subject for 5 years, you become an expert at it. Now just imagine if you found that one thing, and then every day you wake up and that's what you do. Like I tell people, I now talk, breathe, and eat coaching. So when I wake up, I'm either going to be on a Zoom call with a client, because I have clients that sometimes tell me my best time is 6 a.m. because I give them an opportunity to tell me what their best thinking time is, so that we can use that time. And so if your business spread, then you can't sharpen your saw. And remember, like I said, because you have to continue growing. I have to create time to continue learning my trade and be able to support. So whatever trade it is, even when let me talk about the cake business. You and I belong to the same generation, and you can see that the cake that we used to eat is our traditional cake. I still prefer that to the creamy stuff. But cake has taken on a life of its own. It's now about art. You can't go back and say, oh no, what I want to do is my traditional cake, when the world is demanding for something else. Because incidentally, when you come into the world of entrepreneurship, you have to respond to what your clients are looking for. So discover that thing that makes you you, and then think through it. And so for us as coaches, we'll come in to kind of challenge you and push you to the edge to be more creative in the space that you have.
Thank you. What are some of these common limiting factors in performance? And also not only limiting factor, but also the attitudes, behaviors that limit performance.
Well, and as you ask, very interesting question that you ask, and I'm trying to think about it more from the lens of the clients that I coach. I have over 1,000 hours of coaching because I'm busy working towards my mastery. But when I think about that space, a lot of it is inherent fear. There is fear in terms of how somebody is going to show up. There is fear in terms of how people will perceive one. So those limiting fears, the limiting beliefs stand in that way. They become blockers in a sense. And what I've found interesting, because I do a lot of executive coaching, what I've found interesting is that this fear doesn't care whether somebody is starting out in career or they're in the C-suite. Everyone has their own moments when they have self-doubt, when they have an imposter syndrome, and therefore they need a space where they become vulnerable. And when they're becoming vulnerable, what I'm saying now, they know that this is safe space, there is safety here, I can pour out and show you what is really limiting me. Now, the other thing is that when your values are not properly defined, then you're not sure where you belong. So that becomes a challenge. Or some things that, the stereotyping that has happened, that we women just celebrated breaking the bias. There are biases that have been put in our minds to think this kind of thing can only be done by a man. This kind of thing, no, that's a women's thing. You see now, like when we broke the bias around nursing and you find male nurses, it kind of takes a lot of courage for somebody to step into that space, because traditionally there are things that we have put aside and we are labeling them. And so that's where we need to get to that point of understanding. So when you get into coaching now, trying to kind of connect the thread, when you get into that space, what you're looking for is being able to understand what is it that is standing in my way. So in most cases, even when I'm coaching my clients, I tend to explore a lot of the barriers that they foresee. Because if you're able to envision those barriers, then part of the battle is won. Because then we say, okay, now that you know that this is a potential barrier, let's consider how you want to navigate around it.
Issues of self-belief. People think they're not good enough for certain jobs, for certain careers. As you said at the beginning, they're only looking at what their weaknesses are, not what their potentials are. So I believe through your coaching, you tend to stimulate this potential in people. And now we also know that there are other areas of development of human capital that probably you have explored. I know one critical area is the attitude, the reading. we seem not to, after leaving school, we are now only looking at some bit of clips on social media. So there are two things here I would like you to respond to. One is the general development of the human capital, other things that you consider. But also I'd like you to address the issue of the culture of reading as a way of people being able to maximize their potential.
Okay. Wow. That's a huge one, right? When we go to school and graduate, now whether you're graduating with a diploma or a degree or what, that's really introducing you to the world of learning. That's how I look at it. The real learning happens after you have left those 4 walls in this thing called a school. Because it has given you an opportunity to understand that in order for me to acquire knowledge, I have to go into some settings. And therefore then, what is going to separate the people who thrive and maximize a lot of their world is that learning that now begins taking place. And you talked about attitudes. This begins with what is my attitude towards learning? If I'm one who just feels it's a waste of time, then it means that my learning has curtailed. That's where it has ended. Because learning, I mean, think about the books that have been written and the ones that have not been written. Because we are essentially an oral society as Africans. So there's a lot of wisdom that was being passed on from generation to generation around the fireplace. You're doing a fire chat place and something is being passed on. So literally that can continue by finding a mentor. Now there's a difference between a mentor and a coach. A mentor is somebody who has been there, done that, and therefore you don't want to waste time trying to understand something that somebody has answers to already. Or you can know that I have a skills gap, I have a knowledge gap. And once I know that I have this knowledge gap and a skills gap, then guess what you do? In that moment, you choose to go and learn from that experience. Or in our case, like when we are doing coaching, then you're expanding the learning. Somebody is able to step out of themselves and think about things differently. So for reading, a lot of, it's very unfortunate that, we keep on talking about the fact that people, that if you want to hide something from an African, put it in a book. I find it strange. But also I must say that for me, a lot of the learning that has happened to me is because of books. In fact, I'm one of those people that don't lend books. Because I feel, let somebody invest in that book so that then there is something that they are picking out of that endeavor. So reading becomes then very, very important. And when we are talking about reading, it's any form of literature. Whether you're a fiction reader, non-fiction reader, you're reading a journal, you're reading a newspaper, there is something that you're going to find in there. Now, the challenge we also have is the application. People read and don't apply. Now, that's a waste of knowledge. If you're going to just read and enjoy, maybe that is, if your reason for reading was to just enjoy, then maybe it's okay because you're relaxing your mind. But if you want things that are going to be a game changer for you, read and apply, read and apply. And I will use a very simple example. We all know about saving, but how many people save? We all know that you need to invest, that don't just put money somewhere in a pot or just accumulate it. Pick it and go and invest it. Do we take that step? Now, if I'm to use that very illustration, when it comes to investment, then you begin asking yourself, do I know anything about investing? So again, that's where you would say, who do I know? I want to invest in this field. Do I know somebody in that space who could be your mentor? Or should I go for a class on investment? You're looking for a trainer. Or should, because sometimes we just run around people and we say, show me how to do this, yet they have no idea how to go about that particular perspective. Yeah.
Great. And now, when we are talking about enhancing performance, is there a benchmark? How can somebody be able to come up with a performance plan or a benchmark upon which to measure progress? How can we, is it something that is relative, is not something that is real? How do we know that actually somebody is doing well? So in other words, what I'm asking is, how can I be able to tell that I've moved from point A to point B as far as performance is concerned? What should be the initial plans that somebody should have in place?
Well, it becomes subjective, and usually I tell people, be your own competition, be your own competitor. That's why for us in coaching, we don't benchmark anybody against anyone, because you come into that space and there are things that you're going to agree to. Now, once you agree onto those things and you say, I have my forward actions, those constitute your strategic plan. Now you begin tracing your journey vis-a-vis the strategic plan. Now, for me to say that your performance has moved from point A to point B, it depends on a number of factors. It depends on the things that you committed to do. Did you actually commit to them? Have you pursued them? So, because if you just talk about things that do nothing, I usually love what one of my pastors back in the day used to say, that you don't need a prophet to tell you that if you do 0 things, you're going to get 0 results, okay? So you want to trace your journey based on, this is what I decided that I was going to do. These are my benchmarks. So you come up with your own milestones and then track those milestones based on that. Organizations certainly will set up performance benchmarks, and those are the ones that they will be using to trace and say, let's see how people are performing. And so, yeah, if it's an organizational setting, they will set for you the parameters, and those are the ones that you will trace. When it comes to your personal life, come up with your own milestones and track them. But the key thing is to also have an accountability partner, because then they can hold you accountable. And I'm not looking at a laissez-faire engagement. Get somebody who you know that, when I go to them, I respect their time. And therefore, when we are checking in, I know that this person's time is honorable. You can't come all the time and you're saying, no, every time, did you do this? No. We are all masters of excuses, and we can have them. And so what is going to bring a change in somebody's results is when whoever chooses to take the step takes that day.
I think one of the reasons why people fear opening up is they have been betrayed probably previously. So nowadays you are talking about accountability partner. I go and open up to this person. Issues of trust, confidentiality, they normally come up. Then how should people be able to manage this kind of fear?
Choose wisely. You can't live your life in fear, perpetually in fear, because first of all, the key thing that is very obvious, there is no idea that has not been thought about elsewhere. The only difference is that one takes the step to start and another one doesn't start. But what is the company that you keep? You know the famous saying that, once if you're moving around with 5 fools, just know you're the next fool. So choose your company wisely. You can't say that you have wise people around you and then you can't be able to, to hold people accountable. You have a network of people. If I might talk, for example, I'm in the entrepreneurship space. And because I came from an NGO background, I knew I don't have many people who understand business. I enrolled in a Business Network International. And in Business Network International, everyone that is in that space is doing business. So when we meet, you actually check and say, what are the numbers? What do they look like? People are supposed to advise you based on evidence. You cannot begin cooking numbers. You know what I mean? So choose your company wisely, because once you have meaningful people around you, just get out of your clan, your small clan, because probably they're all there singing praises. You need to be in some space where people can ask you some tough, challenging questions, because then those push you to introspect.
Now, I've also had people say they can work with limited supervision, they are self-driven, and yet the reality can be different in really places of work after getting the job. I wonder really what causes that. Do people just tell lies that they are self-driven and therefore can work with under limited supervision? What are some of the things that really should be done in order to people to live according to the things they state?
I guess for you to get those kind of responses, traditional ways of doing interviews no longer work. You can tell competences by just observing people. So the traditional things of, okay, tell me about yourself. I will tell you I'm self-driven. What else do you want to hear? I will go on the internet and I will find all these things. Talk about limited supervision. Give them a task. Observe them and see what happens. Because once they do task-oriented things, then you're going to see a bit of the difference, because we are dealing with human beings. And now, first of all, we are also living. I hope people are realizing that we are now in a different generation. that is now getting into what are they calling it, that disconnected generation, okay? Because what is happening, COVID-19 came and it has shown us that we can work from anywhere. So you're no longer going to supervise people and keep an eye on them. Then what happens? So you need to go run after the results, get onto results-based things, whether they are going to tell you stories. If you said you're going to give me something in 3 days, that is all I need. I don't want to listen to your excuses. Whether you did that work under a tree, it doesn't matter. Produce the work that you are meant to produce. Whether you did it when you're under, you're in bed, it's okay. Give me the work that you said you're going to give me. The traditional way that we knew how things are supposed to be done, somebody sits at the other desk and I'm sitting here and I'm keeping an eye on them. They can sit there and they are playing solitaire. So solitaire, what is it called? What? Solitaire, yes. That's what they are playing cards. So if they are playing cards and you're looking at them, are they doing the work that they are doing? And essentially, it goes back to your personal values as an individual, because laziness will eventually breed laziness. You can't cheat for so long.
It is also interesting to note that some organizations no longer emphasize degrees.
Because the experience, so somebody is bringing experience onto the table. So what's your degree without the meaningful experience that is going to give me results?
Probably we need to transform our mindset also here. So you are still watching Smart 24 TV. This is the Be Your Best program. We'll take a short break. Please don't go away.